Hi, everybody. Come on in, take your virtual seats. We're excited to have you here today. This is going to be a really great session. For those of you who've been with us the last couple of webinars, you know that they go fast and there's a lot of information. But don't worry, we do send out the recording afterwards, so you're welcome to go back and kind of go through it again or share it with anybody who couldn't make it today. We're going to go ahead and jump in since we are going to be pretty light on time. My name is Rachel Hutchison. I am the Senior Manager of Online Instructional Design here at the Academy at NHSA. I am joined today by the fabulous Dr. Deb Bergeron, known fondly to many of you as Dr. B from her time at the Office of Head Start. She is now our Deputy Director of Innovation and Community Engagement here at NHSA. And also Annabelle Bergeron, who manages our Academy Plus platform and is happy to share a little bit more about that with you today or even after the fact if you want to dig a little deeper. So just a couple of housekeeping notes before we jump in. I already mentioned this will be recorded. You'll be getting a follow-up email from us probably within the next few days. And also, this is not a certificate of completion training. This is a moments of inspiration training. So we hope that you will jump in with this with both feet and really take this 30 minutes to think about how we can improve in service so that it's a great experience for everyone. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. B take off on that topic.
Excellent. Thanks, Rachel. Very excited to be here. This has been such a fun series and actually been a really exciting way for us to share with programs what we have learned about adult education and engaging adults online and that challenge, but it can be really effective if it's thoughtful and intentional. And so trying to share those skills with you so that you can turn that into meaningful experiences at the program level. So before we jump in, what I'd like to do is a really quick interactive activity. Courtney's going to share a link in the chat to a Padlet. This is kind of our go-to tech tool of choice here at the Academy when it comes to quick shares. And so if you click on that link, this should be pretty easy. It's going to go to a page that looks like this. And there's a little plus sign in the bottom right. And the only thing you have to do is click on that plus sign and you can share an answer. I also created the ability in this to, so once you publish your answer, you can also like other people's answers. If you don't want to type it out, you're like, oh, I was just going to say the same thing. You can just hit like, or if you want to comment, you might want to say, wow, that doesn't happen to me, or something about that particular entry. So we don't have to have hundreds of these on here. Maybe we would have fewer and we'd see where the intensity is. So that is for you to use. And really, you see the question there. Think about the most awesome PD training you've attended. And then what I really want you to put is why. I care less about what it was. I care more about why it's something that came into your mind. When I asked that question, when you read that on the screen, you immediately thought of something. Why did you think of that thing? And so let's take a minute and let everybody share or like other people's comments and see where we end up as we go through this. And I'm looking up at my big screen, so you have to watch my face as I look up. Lots of fun. I see people like fun and interesting and interactive. Those are words I'm seeing a lot of. Definitely the presenter is having an impact. So an icebreaker that really made you think. And years later, I love it. That's a good training. You got to move. Personal, fun, and interactive. incorporating the why, understanding why you're there. Meaningful to your position, able to directly incorporate it into daily work. And in the chat during shares that you didn't just read off slides, uncovered using slides as photos to enhance. I love that, Doreen. I think it can be very tempting to just read off slides because sometimes you can get nervous when you're presenting. I actually do some of my presentations with just photos, no words. And it forces me to not do that. So I love that you mentioned that. The trainer was passionate about classroom management, and that really stuck. I probably could guess something else about that training, which we'll talk about in a minute. Having the speakers knowledgeable, engaging and not boring. So that's probably not reading off slides would be a big part of that, but also just doing things with you. We like to move. You got to take resources back, actionable steps. Excellent. These are all fantastic. So keep adding to our Padlet because we keep this information and we kind of process it and we'll share stuff back with you. What we've done during these trainings is focus on adult learning theory. If we are going to teach adults, most of us are trained to teach young children. We understand child development. We know birth to 5. But do we know how adults learn? Have we thought about that before we plan a pre-service or an in-service? A lot of times we don't. We just assume folks are like we are, we'll consider something we enjoy, and we kind of apply those things. What we have learned here at NHSA at the Academy is that there are research-based practices for adults that are very important to consider. And so this series, if you've come to the other webinars, you know this is a series of highlights around adult learning theory. So today's focus is going to be on the reality that if we are not pulling from the adults' prior knowledge, if we are not teaching something that is directly relevant and useful, most adults will tune us out. So we saw a lot of things on that Padlet that are also part of the adult learning theory, things like engagement, being personal, connecting with the students, so with the learners. So that's that they're funny or they had us moving around or they did activities. Those are all part of adult learning theory. We've actually talked about some of those. We're going to focus today on those couple of post-its that were up there that said things like, I could take it home and use it tomorrow. I learned something or made something that was directly applicable to my work, that was meaningful. And I really loved the post-it that talked about classroom management. The person was passionate about classroom management. I'm going to guess something else. I don't know who put that one up there, but I'm going to guess something else. Classroom management is really important to you right now. And because the topic and the material is so relevant and valuable, your level of attention increases and your engagement with the material increases. So understanding who your people are, what prior knowledge are they bringing to the table? What interests are they bringing to the table? And how are you going to tap into those things in order to teach this other thing over here that may or may not on the surface be relevant to them from their perspective? How do you do that? So the next thing I want to ask before I turn it over to Rachel, I'm going to do this really quickly, and then we'll do this one in the chat. If you think about prior knowledge, relevance and meaning of the topic, of the content, what are some of the barriers that make it difficult to ensure that the training you are doing with your folks is relevant and meaningful and that they see it as useful and applicable, say, tomorrow when they come back to their jobs? What are some of the things that create a barrier to ensuring that the training you do feels meaningful and relevant, applicable. Think about that for a minute. We're going to put this one in the chat. And I'm really hoping you're typing. Yes. Just like with a teacher, right? I want to teach kids how to write their name, and half of them can't hold a pencil and the other half are writing cursive. What am I doing with that? Exactly. Those varied knowledge levels, resistance to change, meeting different learning styles. So you've got content that's relevant and applicable. Is it being delivered in a way that folks are going to understand that relevance? The tools are used as a part of the training and not immediately accessible. Yeah, that's really good. Or like, I have to buy it. That's a really good point. Or they say they're going to send me the slides and I never get them, or things like that that do happen in, especially in virtual kinds of things. Getting feedback, including the audience in the learning process, different job positions, certainly. So you're sitting with a group, you've got bus drivers, you've got teachers, teacher aides, you might have some family service folks in there, and you're going to teach all of them about bloodborne pathogens. And there are people in there who maybe directly, like health folks, who are directly in contact with that every day. And then you've got someone like maybe a cook who says, when am I ever going to need this? Why do I have to take this? And so you have to figure out, Erica, how do you take something like bloodborne pathogens and make it relatable and relevant? And that is setting the stage. Kind of the one post-it said they explained the why. So really making sure the why is clear. If the why is clear, the applicability and the relevance is usually there. But then you've got prior knowledge. So you might have people in your learning group that say pathogen. What is that? I have never heard of a bloodborne pathogen. What does that even mean? And then you could have health folks who have been doing this their whole lives. So you have to figure out how to hit that sweet spot, and allow folks to be flexible. Technology capabilities can be a really big piece as well. And we know that certainly here because a lot of what we do is online. So I'm going to turn this over to Rachel, and she's going to dig deeper into this, but we're going to bring it all back to knowledge, prior knowledge, relevance and applicability, and how you can help to support that piece in the training you're doing.
Thanks, Dr. B. Okay, so this is a good point to say there's no easy answer to this. There's no one thing that you're missing, that if you do this one thing, it's all going to work great. That's not the case. But there are ways that you could probably think a little more intentionally and maybe work a little bit smarter with resources that are there in your community. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, because the real key to doing trainings that are going to be meaningful, which is the name of our series, we're rallying here for meaningful trainings, is to dig into your community and what's already there. It's not up to you to know everything, and it's not up to you even to execute everything, but you do have to figure out what resources you have. One of the main things that adults really like to have when it comes time to learn is a choice. So we mentioned this in our pre-service with a punch training, where one great way to set up your pre-service is to make it like a mini conference where there's lots of opportunities for people to self-select into things that they want to learn. Now that's not going to be possible for your poor PD manager to go and run 10 different sessions at once. There's going to need to be other people involved. So I want you to just take a second here and let's see what we can come up with in a minute. In the chat, share ideas. What does your staff know that they could share? Just off the top of your head, somebody really loves to read, and maybe they have a favorite book that they would want to share about. I'm just spitballing. Maybe somebody has really great healthy food recipes or strategies for helping with family dining that would be beneficial for more people to learn. What do people on your staff know? You could be like, oh, I wish other people knew how you do this. What could your parents come in and share? Always looking for ways to engage them, right? And sharing their prior knowledge helps them to feel like they're a part of your community. We all know this. In-service is a great way to do that. And then also, What about your board? What about members of your community who love and support your program? What could they come in and share that might be valuable and beneficial to people in your program? And by valuable and beneficial, I don't always mean something that's going to check a compliance box. I mean something that's going to make your staff bond and feel good and come together. NHSA just did this last week. We all came together as a team, and a whole crew of us went out and sang karaoke. That was a great bonding experience for us as a team, for those of us who like it. That's not going to be for everyone. Remember, no one answer for everybody. One size fits all is terrible as a training option. So I'm seeing sharing stories from individuals is awesome. Storytelling is what we do best in Head Start. Every family has a great story. Every child has a great development story. There's always something wonderful that we can learn just by hearing someone's story. So that's a really great idea. Set up story time and just invite people to come in and share. Very low stakes there. Oh, a carver. Your bus driver's a carver. That's amazing. I am so impressed by people who can do that kind of work. It's so beautiful and so wonderful to share and make people feel seen for more than just their role. Different languages, how to work with dual language learners, having people come in and share that from their perspective. Fantastic ideas. So right there in about a minute, you can already see those wheels are starting to turn. So I would really encourage you to start thinking about your resources. Who you got? Who could you go and talk to that might want to come in and share? Yoga instructor, that's my jam. I'll come to that one. Okay, so that's number one. Give them ways to make choices. Second is buy-in. And this is the why section, right? You got to make sure that you're offering things that your staff actually want. So first off, you kind of develop a list of who you've got and what they might be able to offer, and then go back and ask, what would you like to learn about during in-service? This could be a very simple survey. This could be focus grouping. This could be conversations by the water cooler. It doesn't have to be anything really in-depth or intense. Just get a sense of where your people are interested and what they might want to learn so that you know that when you get to in-service, you've given intentional choices that people actually want to make, right? It doesn't make any sense to put, I don't know, puppeteering for kids on the agenda and then nobody wants to do that. I'd be all alone in that session. I'd be very sad. So you want to make sure that you've got both the resources and the interest level. Because then, as Dr. B said, when people are curious, they will engage and it will be successful. And then the third part of this little stool is the feedback. So you want to make sure that people are given opportunities to share what they learned, to follow up. Maybe it's intentionally putting it into practice, but maybe it's also just getting together with their peer mentor and trainees talk about what they learned. And maybe they have something they could share next time. And then you've got a natural pool for what you're doing next. It's important to get feedback that is as authentic as possible. You can rely on surveys if you want just kind of a broad brushstrokes that you have numbers you can rely on too. But those, I wouldn't discount those one-on-one, just personal chats with people. How'd that go? What'd you think? You get pretty authentic feedback that way too, so that you know which way to go. None of that is brain surgery. I bet a lot of you do this kind of stuff. So if you're doing trainings in your programs that follow this kind of model, share that in the chat. Let people know what you're doing. Share your prior knowledge with all of us so that we can apply it a little bit more universally across Head Start. With 300 staff, how do you do that? That is a really great question. And obviously, I don't know your program well enough. I don't know how many sites you have. But I would say that it starts with working backwards. So you're going to want to say, okay, this is when in-service is going to take place. This is how many sessions I'm going to need over this many days. That means I'm going to need this many leaders. That means I'm going to need this many members of my community. Where do you start from there? So if you can kind of break it down and chunk it into pieces and work backwards into it, it won't feel quite so overwhelming. But there are other options where you can make sure that everybody gets a chance to do something that they like and it wouldn't put any pressure on you at all. And I'm going to have Annabelle join us to share a little bit more about what that can look like.
Yeah, Sarah, that was such a great segue. And I think really important to think about when we have a large number of staff that can feel very overwhelming and figuring out okay, but everybody has different pieces that they know of prior knowledge or things that they like or don't like. And it can start to feel really overwhelming. And I think the fun thing that we did at the Academy was really thoughtfully put something together where we felt like people could come in and take the bits and pieces that were really important to them, that spoke to them, that lit a little fire, that brought them some joy, and be able to have the capacity to fill that space in a virtual environment. So with our Academy Plus subscription, this is really fun because your entire program gets access to 53 courses. Our current catalog's 53. It's ever growing based on conversations that we have with programs like this. And the fun part about the catalog is we have lots of compliance-based courses that are great for pre-service and onboarding. Even within those courses where you kind of say, hey, here are the non-negotiables. Even inside of those compliance-driven courses, they have interaction so that the material is presented in a way that is relevant to your job function. So if you come into active supervision as a bus driver, you can take that course as a bus driver. So even though it's this general, active supervision, it's very important content. We need to take it every year. But if you're given scenarios in a classroom and you drive a bus, those scenarios are no longer relevant to me. And now my buyout's gone. So even our ability to adjust those courses so that as you take those compliance-based courses, they're directly relevant to your job function. So we have that fun little compliance box where we can say, hey, we're doing this in a really fun play space. But then for that other side where you say, we just want you to learn and grow as individuals, as professionals, and come into a space where you can fill your bucket. And maybe you garden on the weekends and you're like, yeah, but I have no idea how to bring gardening into my classroom. I work with 3-year-olds. Well, there's a gardening course. And if that is your fire, if that's your joy, you can come in and take PD that's relevant to something that you feel passionate about. That might not be, oh, well, I'm a classroom teacher, I'm not really a gardener, but you are on the weekends. And that can be part of the joy that you bring into your classroom. And so being able to fill your PD bucket in a way that feels like, okay, my compliance-driven courses are relevant to me and my job function, but so are these other spaces of my life that are filled with joy. I'm able to learn content that's relevant that I can practice in the next day in my classroom with my kiddos, where all of it is driven through what learning theories are going to work best for our kiddos. But for a topic like gardening, you can come in and really fill those buckets. And so when you think about a staff like 300 or 500 or 600, or maybe it's only 25, but something like pre-service feels overwhelming and, well, I don't know that I could make something that works for everybody's learning styles or their prior knowledge or what they want to learn. It might be fun to explore a space like this. Come and play with us for a little while and see if it works for your team. And if it does, how fun that you've found something that allows people to bring their prior knowledge, but also gain skills in the spaces that they love and they want to learn more about. And if it doesn't, but you've sat in this webinar and picked up a few pieces that you think, oh, this would be really interesting to go back and see if we can change maybe the way that we design our pre-service or our in-service courses so that they're relevant to different learning styles. Or a little thing about thinking about active supervision for your bus drivers or for your cooks so that everything that we're presenting to our staff members feels directly relevant to their job function. It's important that we have buy-in at that level so that what we're doing doesn't get lost, because we know how much you guys care about what you're doing. And so if it can be thoughtfully done, then all the hard work that you've put into it really pays off when people feel like they get an experience out of something that they can bring back to work tomorrow. So we're going to throw my calendar link in the chat. If you want to talk more about Academy Plus or designing in-service or pre-service for your program, our team members, I would love to chat with you and connect you to any of our other team members who might support your program. But I hope there's a little gem out of this 30 minutes that you can grab and hold on to as you think about your year and the years coming up.
I think those are great. That's a great kind of overview about what we've been working on. And what I would say, we've given you a few tidbits here about prior knowledge, relevance, answering the why, freeing up time. Technology is a blessing and a curse. Using the blessings of technology to free up some time and give adults more choice as to when and where and how they learn is a real upside of technology. And then you can spend more of that time. And I put this in the chat to somebody else, like then you can spend more of that time doing in-person, face-to-face, team building, culture building, the things that you can't do on a computer. So we really think that's a huge benefit. But the bottom line for all of this, regardless of which little piece you take back with you that you think, oh, we should do more of that, make sure that whatever you're doing is intentional, that has some kind of checks and balances system that holds you accountable for what you say you're going to do. So if you say, oh, we really want to make sure that what we're doing has relevance and meaning and considers learning styles, you can't just say that. You have to think about, what am I going to do to make sure that happens? And how am I going to check myself to make sure that we're hitting those points? What we do here is we use a rubric, and we base it on SUNY. They have a wonderful online learning for adults, very research-based rubric. And we force ourselves to go in there and check them and say, hey, did we do this? Did we do this? Oh, we got to go back. We missed this piece. So we look at everything that we've been teaching over these webinars and make sure that we aren't just saying we want to do it, but that we're holding ourselves accountable. So I do think you have to really think about that, because this can get overwhelming and you can get to a point where it's like, well, I just have to do this thing so I'm compliant. I want to make sure I'm compliant. But much better to make compliance the floor and engagement and really high quality learning the ceiling. If compliance is your floor, you're teaching your teachers that's all you're expecting from them when they get into a classroom. And I know you want more than that from them. So setting that high bar for yourself is modeling what you expect them to be doing when they're working with families and kids. All right. So that is, in a nutshell, what we wanted to talk about today. Prior learning, meaningful content, or taking content that might not feel meaningful and making it meaningful. I think about bloodborne pathogens, and you think about, people who might think, well, when am I ever going to need that? And I think that's the whole setup for that one, is you might not, but if you do, you're going to want it, because the risks are really high for my own health and safety. So that's maybe one that you're creating the why, and you're bringing them in through that piece. But I think the big part about all of this is making sure there are options for your staff, that they have some choice about when and where, sometimes what. And once adults feel like they have some wiggle room, some autonomy, their engagement is much better. So we invite you to engage with us further. Annabelle is there for a meeting. Rachel and I are always here if you have questions. I think Annabelle has set up a sandbox so that you can just try it out. And I even said in the chat, it might be something like what we're doing. Maybe you find another tool that you like better. It isn't about that specifically. It's more about the process that you're taking to get to that end goal of high quality professional development that supports your staff, so they're good at what they do, and then they stick around and you keep them longer. And that's a big part of this is staff retention. Rachel, do you have any final words you want to share with folks?
No, I think you said them all. That is perfect. We're so glad that we were able to share what we have learned with you. And we hope that our tools will also inspire you to go and make great trainings for your folks so that they can do great work with their families. Dr. B, you have to have the final word, though.
Head Start is access to the American dream. Go make dreams happen. Have a good
Thanks,
afternoon,
everyone.
everybody.